I think that's an interesting point, because in today's day and age, I think the public is generally unaware of the value of the asset as it is, let alone the future asset. But with regard to that question on Bill 30, the imposition of Bill 30 took away all of the rights of people across the province in zoning to say no to a power project. That's a removal of rights of Canadians that's truly, is unacceptable. And so the imposition of Bill 30 not only put the Ashley in the hands of Ledcor, who was the proponent, who owns many, many, many water licenses, but it also, by eliminating all of these other community governments, it also allowed the progress of these private power projects on rivers to go ahead, essentially without any regulatory work at all. And so today, the largest of the American contractors, a company called Kiewit and Sons, has landed at the top of Howe Sound. And they are bringing in enormous amounts of equipment, going after dozens of our rivers, essentially without any restriction at all. They are blasting away. The Ashlew is a grizzly bear habitat, a valued asset of the neighborhood, and the place is being blasted to smithereens. There'll never be a grizzly bear there again, and the project has to be stopped. The water licenses need to be stopped. And the situation gets worse and worse. 2 weeks ago, the BC Energy Plan was revised, renewed, and the Minister of Energy came out and said that any project of less than 10 megawatts could simply continue. Didn't need to have any special permitting at all, didn't need to meet power purchase criteria. That means hundreds and hundreds of rivers are seeing the fate of what dozens of rivers have seen. So the government essentially is running away with this asset, giving it to private hands against the wishes of the people who are informed, and really stealing it from the public, because the public is completely unaware across the vast numbers.
One of the things that I hear a lot as an environmentalist and working within the environmental community is that with climate change, that people realize the significance and the importance and what's happening to our environment, and they're desperate to see the production of green energy. And so I think a lot of people are willing to look the other way, and they think, well, so what if it's BC Hydro producing the energy, or so what if it's a private power company producing the energy, as long as we're getting green energy.
Yes.
And so then you have to explain.
So they're frightened.
They are frightened, and this is it's a layered discussion, and it's a complex issue. And so I think what's really contingent upon us is to say that we're fully supportive of green energy, and we realize the critical importance of it to the future of British Columbia. But we need to get the benefits from green energies and control it.
Those are the two key points. Who's going to own it, and who's going to control the resource and how it's utilized. See, the great advantage that we have in terms of our existing BC Hydro system is that because the public owns this energy, there are no issues around us being required to sell it south of the border. It's our energy, and we can sell it to ourselves. As soon as the energy is privatized, then you're dealing with a whole different situation. Private investors have NAFTA rights, and presumably they would enforce them if the government wanted to try and stop energy being exported, regardless of what the needs are here in BC. I mean, one of the things the government has been saying to try and get support for its current energy plan is that we want to be self-sufficient. But we can't, in a sense, be self-sufficient if, in fact, we're giving away the resources that we have to firms that are in a position to be able to export them. So this is a real, I think, a very important concern that people need to understand.
The water licenses come with land tenure as well, the occupancy of the entire area, which is an interesting thing for us around the environmental community, because early on, this process has moved so rapidly since 2001 to today in 2007 that there was talk of water licenses and talk of changes to BC Hydro. But now we realize that we're changing an asset where we received 100% of the value to assets where we'll receive 3%, but we're financing 100% of these contracts for 40 years at 20 times the price of power. And so now we know that in the water licenses, and there are hundreds and hundreds and hundreds issued, and dozens in development, some are hooked up in the grid already, we now know that they also include the land around those assets. So as these are then trade controlled, then you get to the issue of what about native rights and what about lands and titles, et cetera, et cetera. Well, clearly these trade deals are going to take that land over. So we lose control of those lands. We can no longer govern them. And as you said, Gwen, one of the most important things in our democracy is the ability to democratize those issues so that we can steward our land. And these water licenses completely remove that, and there are hundreds of watersheds in jeopardy, the Pitt River being one.
One of the things that I think most people are not aware of is how cheaply the government is selling these for. Water for power licenses are a particular type of water license, and there are two levels of water for power licenses. A small project which arguably could generate as much as 10 megawatts is a project in which the water license will be $5,000, and that's a one-time fee, and then the renewal is $200. And for any larger project, we're looking at only $10,000. Now, in the context of a project being able to generate 10 or 15 or 20 million a year, and some of these projects, one has got a contract with Hydro that I believe is now going to pay out about 60 million a year for, I believe it's 30 years. So we're talking about a lot of money here. It appears that power developers who learned early on that BC Hydro was going to be required to buy all this new energy from these private projects located in the province, then dashed out to file their claims, and it's a first come first served basis. There's no other way of allocating right now, despite the enormous potential value of these water assets. And so if you knew early on that this was going to happen and started making your applications, you were in the gravy. And a number of these companies now have got 10, 15, one company has 38 water licenses.
So in a very, very closed-door process, the applicants would then go and get the agencies to sign off, and then they would also go to the local indigenous group and get their consent, essentially, and in some cases offer some small amount of participation so that they have consultation and consent covered. And so down the road, years down the road, when these properties are controlled by trade-regulated contract, that issue of consultation will have passed back in 2005 and 2006, 2007. And people will have hardly noticed that that's occurred. But all of those lands will be lost. And that's part of the process of this corporatization of our public lands. And the stewardship issue passes with these contracts. So in order for us to get a hold of it now that we have this information, what really is the best possible thing to do at this moment. And I have my own opinions on that, but Gwen, perhaps you'd like to give us your opinion on the water licenses as an example. Now that we're aware of this enormous change, how can we stop it so that we can at least look at the situation so that it stops running away from us? Because it seems the government's running the clock.
Well, I wish, in some ways I wish there was a silver bullet to stop this from going ahead. And it's not to say that it's impossible to stop, but it's really tough. And what we need is massive public education.
Native, non-native.
Yeah, native and non-native, definitely, right across the board, that we're losing something that is precious. We're losing our rivers and streams and the power they generate for all British Columbians. And it's not gone yet, but it's going really quickly.
Really quickly.
And we have to say, we have to say to people, wake up, that this is a resource that we all own and that will all benefit, that your children will benefit from, that your grandchildren will benefit from. And we're in the process of giving it away.
Permanently now.
Yeah.